Welcome back to MVGA Podcast. Here at Make Veterans Great Again, my mission is to reach out to fellow brothers and sisters in arms to conquer our mental health together. Just a reminder, you are not alone. Today, I'd like to introduce United States Marine Corps veteran Ben Cantwell, founder of Ben Cantwell Art. Welcome to the show, brother. How you been?
Good, Josh. Thanks for having me. It's pretty psyched to be here. Pretty psyched to talk about this important topic that you're tackling.
Yeah, absolutely. As excited as you are to be here, I'm excited to have you. You're pretty much a celebrity in my book, okay?
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, I don't. I feel like I haven't made it there, but I feel like we've all got a little bit of imposter syndrome going on at some point or another.
Oh man, I can relate to you 100% on that imposter syndrome. It's in there every day. Like, what are you doing? You're not good enough. Like, who? You're just you, but you gotta silence that shit because you are you and nobody else is you, and you're doing what you can do and not what others can do.
Yeah, amen. Your way is the right way because it's your way. And listening to all of the people who, whether it's your friends or individuals you don't know too much coming to you and saying, "Hey, what you're doing is good," just believing them and listening to them. And they're not saying it for no reason. It takes a lot of courage for somebody to reach out and say, "Hey, I like what you got going on," whether it's a podcast or a book or a program or art. So, trusting each other and that we're not just blowing smoke up each other's ass is an important tool, I think.
Yeah, that's an important way to look at it too. Absolutely. So let's just dive right into it. What was your life like before the military?
Oh, dude, I've had a pretty good life, I gotta say. I grew up in California, happy kid throughout high school. A little bit of family stuff, parents splitting, but nothing super crazy. Life was pretty good. Graduated high school up in Northern California, did a little community college. I felt like I was kind of spinning my wheels, not really going anywhere. So I shipped off, went to boot camp in 2012. And you change so much over those 3 or 4 months. And I got back, and my roommates, the only thing that they had done was they moved the TV from one corner to the other corner. And I had undergone this massive transformation. So it was, I think it was the right move for me. I'd always felt patriotic, military fit, family history, all that sort of stuff. And I don't regret a minute of it, dude.
That's awesome. When you were going to community college, were you going for art or any something completely different?
No, I was going for sociology, actually. I'd always kind of been an artist. We all start off finger painting and drawing on the walls and getting in trouble. And I just kind of kept doing it for whatever reason. I was lucky enough to have people around me who said, "Hey, you're not bad at this. You should keep going." And I don't know if it was bullshit or not, but it kind of pushed me to pursue my passion. And, when I would hear about famous artists, I would count myself as somebody who could do that. I would never watch the game and think that I could ever make a pass or catch a touchdown like that. But when it came to art, it was something people told me I was good at. And that community reinforcement that I felt kind of pushed me to follow through with that passion through the Marine Corps.
Okay, that's awesome. So you were in community college. Did you go for a full year, a semester? How long were you there before you decided that wasn't what the route for you?
I think I was spinning for about 3 semesters, maybe four. And
Okay.
then I held out for an infantry contract and had to wait another couple of months because I'd heard horror stories about ending up as a you know, refrigerator mechanic or underwater basket maker or something like that. And I wanted to make sure, one of the reasons a lot of us join is to get into something and make a big change and have a big impact in your life. I
Yes,
thought the
sir.
infantry could deliver that.
Okay. Well, how did the infantry deliver that? How was your time in
Yeah, dude.
service?
Oh, for sure. I had a great time, man. I I didn't have any combat deployments, so experiences may differ for sure. I know I've got very lucky and didn't get out of the my military service with any long lasting extreme injuries or PTSD. So I mean, I was in Second Battalion, Fourth Marines Echo Company, rifleman. Started off, they gave me a radio. Had to follow my fucking super buff little lieutenant around. He had an M4. I had like a IR, a bunch of mags, radios, batteries, and got broke off all the time. And then eventually team leader, then squad leader, and I got out a couple points shy of sergeant as a corporal squad leader in 2015 or 2016, right on the cusp there.
Okay. Yeah, we're right. You got in like right before me. So I got in at 2013 and got out 2017.
Right.
Well, you said something huge. You said you had no combat deployments and you counted it as a blessing. Did you always feel that way, or is that something you worked your mind into seeing and believing it that way?
Yeah, that's a great question, Josh. I because it's spot on, dude. You're like inside my head. I counted it as a curse, I was really frustrated with my recruiter. Right out of infantry school, my last name begins with a C. And I think everybody like G and beforehand went to 2-4, and a bunch of other guys afterwards went to 29 Palms, and all those guys got combat pumps. And I was just, cursing my recruiter and the alphabet and whoever made that decision for a long time. And it took me years of kind of making a difference in my community, um, and actually, causing change and making things happen to feel sort of useful. Because for 4 years, I kind of just spent money and floated around the Pacific and, trained dudes and had a positive impact on their life, hopefully. But I didn't really do what I signed up for. So I felt, again, like a little bit of an imposter there for a long time.
And did you feel that way while you were in, or not until you got out?
I think I was kind of always hoping we would get to go jump on something. Every time we were on a Mew, China started acting froggy or something was going on. And I was always kind of hoping against hope that we would get to go do something gnarly, but we never did. So, when I got out, I was grasping around for kind of a purpose. And I think that period, that year or so, that 6 months, especially when you get out and you go from living next door with your best friends to I'm in this, where am I? What am I doing? What's my purpose? And I kind of grasped around. I reconnected with some old buddies who thankfully hadn't changed or moved out too much and didn't get into any crazy trouble. Started volunteering, started going to school again, hanging out at the Veterans Center at San Francisco State, kind of doing all these things that people had told me to do. And it worked out a little bit, re-immersing yourself in any sort of community you can find is super important.
Okay. I asked you that because like that's something I'm currently working through, right? Like I joined as a combat engineer, didn't get any combat deployments in either. And for a long time I struggled with it. Like I almost felt like I failed, right? But I was just talking to my buddy the other day, actually this week, and he's like, dude, I'm blessed that our generation, like we didn't get to see combat because like how would we handle it, right? Like in my mind, I'm like, yeah, dude, I would have been a badass, or at least I would have done what I needed to out there, right? But I can't really say that. And then I'm like, man, if I'm struggling this much and I didn't see combat, I can't imagine how I would be struggling if I did see combat, right? So I'm trying to realize and recognize and accept that like my calling was to join the Marine Corps, not to fight the war overseas, but to fight the war back home, fight the war against veteran suicide. And my calling was to be doing what I'm doing right now. So that's what I'm trying to use to steer me out of that negative thought process. Because hindsight's 2020, right? Let's just look at the present and the future and move on. So that's what I'm trying to do, and seeing that this is my mission. Like I'm trying to save lives back home.
Dude, and that's critical. Coming home and taking stock of what you've been given and taking your lemons and using them to make change in your community is important, because people are going to keep having these terrible things happen, and like fighting these demons. And anybody who's trying to do something positive is, in the correct stack, as opposed to the stack that sort of mongers fear and pushes towards stigmatizing mental health and stuff like that and calling people names for reaching out. Like there's no more room for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, so when you got out, like how long did you struggle for? Or did you even, how long until you realized you were struggling?
Oh, dude, well, I was drinking more than I was usually used to. And I think that my family has a history of that as well. So I was pretty aware of it. And it took me just some solid life changes, getting reimmersed in school, making some career changes, relationships, friendships, getting back into family more than I had been. I kind of thought I could do it all on my own. But I would say I was struggling pretty hard for 6 months. And even today, dude, I'll catch myself getting mad about little shit that's not important, or getting frustrated when something's not the way it's supposed to be. And then, if I'm around a civilian buddy, they'll, dude, what are you freaking out? Everything's okay. You can do that tomorrow. I'm like, you know what? You're right, man. You can take a lot of traits, a lot of militaristic values that you get from the military and spin those into positives. But when you take any of those and you kind of carry them to an extreme, they can be extremely harmful, not to yourself, but to the people around you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they could be harmful to both people, yourself and the people around you. And the worst part is like, this isn't an excuse, right? Because we have to be more aware of what we're doing and how it affects ourselves as opposed to everybody else as well. But a lot of the times, like we don't even realize how hurtful or destructive we're being to others we're just going off of what we think is normal, what we think is right, or what we were instilled with for the past 4 years or whatever. So it is a hard change, but it sounds like you made a great choice by going to the Veterans Center at the school you were going to and reemerging
Yeah.
yourself into with veterans.
Yeah, I made a lot of classes for that first year I was out. Had a couple of veterans. The school I went to in San Francisco was a pretty big commuter school, so there was a lot of guys who had, done their community college and then transferred over and were utilizing that GI Bill, which is an incredible tool. So being able to talk to them and reconnect, and we wouldn't even always talk about only military stuff. Just going out and hanging out and knowing that the people you were with were going through a similar thing made life easy. And then you kind of slowly branch out. They have friends. Everybody's got friends. They're involved in different programs you can volunteer with. You know, that's how I got into EMT stuff. Actually, a buddy of mine was he was an older vet who had got out a couple years before me, and we took a math class together. And he had told me about he was going to go do an EMT school. I was like, oh, I like combat lifesaver shit. I know how to put a tourniquet on. I'll go. I know the word hemostatic agent. I'll go fucking take the class about medical stuff. And then I did that, and like, hey, this job is we're making minimum wage. How do we make money doing this? And everybody's like, oh, we're just here to be firefighters, dude. And I was like, oh, I'll be a fucking firefighter. That sounds rad. And lo and behold, it was like the same caliber individual, a lot of the same work ethic, very similar activities that to the infantry. And it clicked for me, dude. That was what I wanted to do. And here we are.
That's a interesting field to get into because I've just learned, I haven't done the research on it, but I was just informed that I want to say first responders, i.e. like paramedics in that, have the highest suicide rate, even higher than veterans, but it's just not spoken about. So that's an interesting fact. But I think what you're getting at is like, I say this all the time when we're on active duty, especially living in the barracks, you have group therapy every day, whether you want it or not, because you're going to open up your door and there's going to be a brother or a sister or whoever right there, and you can bullshit with them, talk the same way. You don't have to like change up the way you joke or act because you don't have to worry about them calling and getting you checked in or anything like that. Like you guys can just express what you're feeling, what you're going through in that moment. And even if it ended in a fist fight, we're hugging at the end of the day and drinking some Jack together, right? Not that that's the greatest thing to do because I have now gone sober, right?
No, good for
Well,
you, man. Hell
we'll at
yeah.
least call it California sober, right? Like I cut alcohol out of my life.
There you go.
I realized that like there's too many demons that come with that.
Yeah, and it's very easy to lose control. And like, everybody's got their different recipe, dude. If it's cutting out booze for you, if it's cutting out everything for somebody else, like there should be no stigma. But just as long as we realize that each person's got their own limits and to monitor each other's warning signs and say, hey, man, I know you like to drink a little bit, but you want to talk about how it might be having an effect on you, you know?
Yeah, having those hard conversations.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the toughest parts. You got a lot of love for these guys, and you try to call them up, and it's been months or maybe even a year or something. You realize somebody's going a little bit off, and try to, you have so much history to reconnect on, and maybe they just want to talk about the easy stuff and joke about politics or whatever. But you owe it to each other to ask those questions that might sting a little bit.
Yeah, because you're only doing harm to yourself and the other person if you're not willing to deep dive, right? Like when I ask people, how are you doing? I'm like, I don't want the surface answer. I want the deep value. Like genuinely, how are you doing? Like, how are you doing mentally? Because a lot of people, I'm guilty of it myself, right? You ask me how I'm doing. I don't want to unload my problems on you. Like, I don't want to seem like a burden, or I don't want to seem like I have problems. Like, especially doing this podcast, I struggle with like, how do I convey what I'm going through versus how am I supposed to act like I'm strong, right? I get I'm strong in that, but I still suffer and I still go through my own problems, right? But how do I share that with you? And at this point, I'm just trying to be as real and open and honest at any point in my life where I just don't even care. Literally, I was young, dumb, and a Marine. I got married while I was in the Marine Corps, tried to hide it from everybody back home, right? I literally lied to my parents, my family, my friends up until about 2 weeks ago, right? I got married in 2015, I'll say, and it's 2023. And I just now told my parents. Don't get me wrong, they've known for years, right? Like a lot of
Yeah.
negative shit has happened and they found out different ways, right? But like they haven't heard it from me up until I told them 2 weeks ago, right? And I had all this anxiety, like fear, worries, all this shit. I even told myself I was going to take this to the grave, right? That I wasn't going to tell them. And then I told them and they reacted way different in a positive way, right? basically they're like, it's water under the bridge at this point. Like, we don't care. We love you. We want you to be happy, yada, yada, yada. But like, for me, I had to get that off my chest because, dude, I don't know if you know, but I hope you don't know, but that came with a lot of burden, disappointment, regret, all those. So it felt good to getting it out.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised like how forgiving a lot of people that love us can be, especially family and old friends. You know, they might not know what we're going through, but they know us the best, and they can be pretty accepting. And I think a lot of guys are, unfortunately, like what you went through, are sort of hesitant to share some of the difficult things that happen because they might not understand. But I would urge people struggling with stuff or recently separated from the military to like give it a shot and try talking to your old buddy about it. And a lot of times a decent friend will say, "Hey man, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I'll listen to you and I'll talk to you about it." You know?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because I even called a couple of friends and I'm like, look, and I remembered, I had a vivid memory of a conversation we had. And I brought up that conversation. He's like, dude, I don't even fucking remember that. Like, I don't care. Like, thanks for telling me. Like, I forgive you, but like, I don't care. It never caused any problems between us, you know? But it was me. It's like we hold on to all this shit when we got to realize everybody else is living their life and they're going through things. Like, your little issue is a big issue to you, but it's a little one to them, or not even to them, because they're so busy with their own lives. Like, we got to realize we're not the center of other people's lives. Yeah, we may fuck up and make mistakes, but like, be a man, be a woman about it, fix yourself and move forward.
Exactly. Yeah, we're our own biggest critics. And I think sometimes our own self-conscious gets in the way of making progress because we hold ourselves to such an unreasonable standard. We hyper focus on our failures, and other people are much more ready to be like, "Oh, dude, it's good. Shit happens." And we're the last ones to tell ourselves that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that you were drinking a little bit more, so that was a negative coping mechanism, right? Were you doing any other negative coping mechanisms when you first got out that you didn't realize until later?
I mean, just the standard pushing people away and kind of just wanted to be on my own and think I figured it out. I think one of the worst things I did was I grew an incredibly hideous beard. I mean, my beard is one of the patchiest scrub brush looking things in the world. So I,
Hey man, you
like
better not be
most
talking
guys who
shit
get
on me.
no, you look good, dude. At least yours connects. I had nothing in the middle of my mustache. It was like a little wispy Fu Manchu. I looked like a bootleg Robin Hood, dude. I was fucking
Okay.
garbage. And
Yeah.
you've got something solid going on. Like mine was long and you could still see through it. It was gross, dude. So stayed away from that. And on a serious note, just pushing away people that were trying to help me because I had it figured out and I was tough enough to do it on my own. And realizing that it's good to ask for help and you can lean on people. I started doing that without really even realizing it by hanging out with other vets at the vet center and volunteering. And then that sort of evolved into like, man, I'm not feeling so great. Let me go down and like go to the community center, like go to the vet center at school and just do some homework there and start talking to other fools.
Okay. Oh, so you would actually just go hang out at the vet center for a couple hours a day then? Just
Yeah, I mean, it was a commuter school. I would take the train into San Francisco every day, or not every day, every day that I had class, and I'd be there for 10 hours. And if I didn't have class, I would have to kick a can around the parking lot or find somewhere to sit down and get some Wi-Fi and do some homework. So and a bunch of people are there. You're sitting in the vet center. You're like, oh hey, what's up, man? What's your name? What are you doing here? What are you studying? Especially some of the older folks who had been around the block a couple times saw the fresh beard and they knew I was just recently out, and thankfully they kind of picked up those breadcrumbs and helped me out a little bit.
That's awesome. So, what are some positive coping mechanisms that you've implemented in your life?
Oh man, I mean, there's so many positive ones that you try to do and it's impossible to keep up with all of them, but some of the things that I've found most successful are getting outside, trying to go for walks or hiking with friends and stuff like that. I was doing jujitsu for a long time and I had a little injury, so I'm hoping to get back into that recently or pretty soon. But just finding things that bring you joy, bring you happiness, whether it's exercising this certain way or running marathons. I think getting physical is a pretty critical one. And then just spending time with like friends and family, like going to that weekend thing that your buddy's doing that sounds kind of weird and just throwing yourself into it. Or saying, hey, I'm coming over for dinner this week, Dad. Like, what day is best for you? And just kind of pushing for those relationships to redevelop after you've been gone for 4 years and then distant for another 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So I lost my train of thought. 1 second. I apologize. Oh,
No worries, bro. Yeah, I mean, there's so many coping mechanisms that people can do. It's like if something makes you feel better, it's a coping mechanism. There's no limit. It's rad.
yeah, absolutely. And but the flip side of that coin is there's so many negative coping
You're
mechanisms
absolutely
that make
right.
you feel better, but you don't realize it's actually hurting you. So that's why I try
Yeah,
to
you're absolutely
distinguish
right, dude.
between the two. Um,
Yeah.
During that transition phase when you were struggling the most, were you still drawing, or did you put that to the side?
Yeah, art is actually an incredible coping mechanism. I forgot I was on here as an artist partially. I was doing so I drew throughout high school. I took art classes every year, which was rad. And in the Marine Corps, I actually like would barter with art almost. It was like my jalapeno cheese. I would in boot camp, I drew a shitty sketch of this guy, a recruit Summers, who was like across the hall from me in his own rack. And I drew a drawing for him. He sent it home to his parents, and he just looked like an emaciated, bald kid in camis, like we all did. And he was so stoked on it that he did my fire watch for like a couple nights. So I was like, oh, this is good. And then throughout the next 4 years, I would, do a little unit T-shirt or something like that. And towards the end, I started, hey man, Cantwell, can you draw me a tattoo? And I'm like, yeah, man, I'll do it for a 6 pack, no problem. Which evolved into a 12 pack and a 30 pack, and then a bottle of Jack, and then that became a bottle of Jameson. And by the time I got out of the military, I had started doing, custom artwork for people for, $30 or $80 or something. And then eventually one day I drew something, posted a picture of it. Somebody said, hey man, can you make a print for that for me so I can hang it on my wall? And that was kind of how it started. I was like, well, shit, dude, I guess I should make a website. And it just slowly rolled into this art business that I have. We're selling, dozens of prints. We got playing cards, we have posters, we have tattoo certificates, we got, a whole bunch of shit. I really wouldn't have been able to do that without these people being like, hey, that's rad. Can I, I'm going to reach out to you and I'm going to try to buy one of these and support you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I therapy or art is an amazing therapy, right? I did a
Hmm.
mental health program and they made us all do art. And as much as our art was different, so many of us had the same meanings behind it, like where we colored or why we colored certain things. And it was pretty interesting. But I don't know if you answered my question. I loved your spiel. Don't get me wrong, but like, did you stop doing art while you were transitioning because you started to struggle, or was that something you always were able to maintain?
I think it was something that I pushed to the periphery of my agenda. I would always draw, and I did use art, which I totally glazed over earlier. Art was a pretty big part of my coping mechanisms. I have sketchbooks that I'll never show people, full of pen drawings and ink drawings with a lot of crazy color and wild shit in there that I was going through, and a lot of it is just just for me, and that's fine. And I use that tool that people don't, and people say, hey, where's the art from like 2016 and 2017? I'm like, here's a few pieces I did, but a lot of it's for me. So it was definitely a huge tool for me to kind of reintegrate and work through some of the tougher feelings that I was going through at that time.
Yeah, that's awesome that you've always had something in your back pocket, so to say, that like not only do you enjoy doing it, but I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's stressful sometimes. And you're like, this is fucking stupid, right? But it like calms you probably too.
Yeah, and even if it's like overwhelming and stressful and there's a lot going on and I got a couple deadlines I need to meet and other stuff at home or at work, it's always a relief. For the most part, I'd say 99% of vets are super understanding and easy to work with and like thoughtful and not as gruff as we'd all like to think we are. A lot of people are very open to, hey man, I need another week to finish this. I got a lot going on. 99% of the time people say, dude, I got you. Don't worry about it. Take the extra week. It's totally fine. And very rare, I have other friends who are civilians who are artists and they work with other civilians primarily. And it's much more of a business transaction. And I feel like I'm doing, even if I've never talked to a vet before and they hit me up, it's like we're friends and then we're doing business after. Like we automatically have something to connect on. And it's just really nice to be able to lean on that shared experience. Just like at the vet center, it's easy to start a conversation if you have the same background as somebody. And it's the same in my DMs. If somebody hops in and they want some art, we can talk about anything for a while. And then I'll say, Hey man, I remember in the beginning of the conversation you said you were interested in art piece. Like, you want to talk about that, or and it's always easy to talk to other people.
I think that's like the great thing about the veteran community. Like, as much as we struggle or we always look grumpy, whatever the case may be, but when it comes to another veteran, like, we're always there to support them the way that we want to be supported, right? But we don't always necessarily show the world that, like, that's how we want to be supported, but this is how we're willing to support other veterans. And I think the veteran community is a very loyal customer base if you can prove your worthiness and loyalty to us, right? Like, as long as we're not just a dollar sign in your eyes and you're actually genuinely care about us or care about like what we're talking about and that, then like I feel like you have a loyal customer for life, right? And we're understanding we get shit that happens, right? Like the 15 minutes prior to the 15 minutes prior to the 15 minutes prior, right? Like we're it's
Oh
always
yeah.
something. So like we can understand each other. And it's like I don't know how to properly word this because I know you're professional, right? Like, but it's almost like you don't have to be professional all the time. You could just be you. Like, you don't have to have a professional side of Ben Cantwell. You could just be Ben Cantwell, and like everyone's going to get along with you per se if they're coming to you for something. Is that making sense?
Yeah. No, totally, dude. I think a lot of other people who are at my medium-sized business level have to present themselves in a very thoughtful and composed way. Versus if somebody hops in my messages and they tell me a cool idea, it's totally kosher for me to respond with like, "That's fucking rad, dude. Like, let's get after it. This is a dope piece. Let's fucking do it." People okay with that because that's how real people talk. Nobody's looking for a greetings and salutations, my fellow veteran. Like, I would be so honored to partake on this artistic adventure with you. I just want to talk to a regular dude. I'm not a poet. I'm not a speechwriter. I just make art and I talk to people.
Yeah. Like, you don't need to blow the smoke up my ass. I'm already here to talk to you and get this work done. Yeah, absolutely. What have you noticed any other struggles from being a veteran or being from military to civilian life again?
I think the biggest struggle is something that's been pretty widely addressed by people and is being actively pursued, and that's the sort of the combating stigma of reaching out for mental health. There's used to be a lot of, remember back when I first got out in like 2016, 2017, there was still a lot of, don't be a pussy, man up, handle your own shit. And that's been slowly getting watered down and pushed to the side as people actually get more serious about, 22 brothers and sisters a day taking their own lives and realizing that push-ups aren't really going to do it. And it takes individuals texting and calling each other. And besides that, ending up meeting each other and hanging out and spending quality time and not just like we talked about earlier, the supermarket. How are you doing? Oh, I'm good, man. How about you? Okay, talk to you later. No, tell me how you're really doing. And I think the biggest issue is the people looking down on that sensitivity and that openness as sort of a passive trait and a non-alpha trait. And of course, we all want to be badass and gangster, but talking to your buddies and making sure they don't smoke themselves is probably the best thing you can do as a friend and a leader.
Yeah, and absolutely. And like, let's be honest, at the end of the day, you're talking to your buddy not for him to smoke himself, but like you're doing it for yourself too, because talking to other people and hearing other people's stories saves you as just as much, right? Like, you can either relate to them or you could be like, oh, they're going through this, like it's relatable here, or whatever the case may be. So like, just don't hesitate to pick up a phone and call somebody, because you can even pretend that it's for that person you're calling, right? But deep down, we know you needed to talk to them. We know you needed to talk. But like, if you're not up to that point in your life where you're able to reach out to talk about your issues, at least reach out to pretend to talk about their issues, because hopefully they're going to say something, whether it's just hello, how are you doing, or they tell you about their struggles, and it's going to help you relate and cope with your own struggles. I personally
Yeah,
see
exactly, dude.
that the stronger man is the one that's willing to talk about their issues and confront their issues, opposed to being that be a man person who is just a grumpy asshole, stay off my lawn all the time, right? Like, they're a miserable person. Why do I want to grow up and be like that? Like, oh, so I could pretend to be a man, but you know how bad that person's hurting, and they just aren't, they're too afraid to speak up on it. Like, that's not manly, man. Talk about your shit, get over it, move on, do better for yourself, your family, your kids. Just be better.
Yeah, you got to set the standard. You got to break the mold. You got to do the right thing and reach out to people, even if it's like a little bit uncomfortable. And that's why people talking about it, this podcast, other groups, everybody's kind of pushing in that right direction. So I think as a community, we're moving towards a healing place. I think is critical after like these 20 plus years of conflict, you know?
Yes, sir. So do you, well, let's talk about your art real quick. I want to get into your business, but I have a question that I'm going to lose if I don't say it now. Do you have like a series of mental health art, or do you just draw what you're feeling, like art that
Uh, yeah,
explicitly
that's a great
express
question,
mental
dude.
health?
That's a great question. I don't feel super qualified sometimes to tackle mental health head on. So what I try to do in my art is sort of instigate interactions that combat mental health. So I might not be giving you the direct medicine for it because I don't think I'm a therapist. I'm an artist. And what I can do is I can inspire positivity and connection and change and people having a good time and talking. So I'll try to post unit art and say, hey, tag somebody from this deployment or like message your old buddies, this sort of thing, or any sort of you can take pride in this. And luckily I'm in a position where I'm able to donate time and artwork to a lot of different organizations that do a much better job than me. So being able to, contribute to their missions, hopefully peripherally, I'm able to make some sort of an impact. But the biggest thing that I feel like I do personally is sort of creating fostering a place where people can talk and connect. And every once in a while, I'll have a young artist hop into my messages and we'll talk about stuff and we'll give them ticks and trips and tricks and tips and hey, here's how you do a website. Here's the best way to get your artwork printed. This is what program I use digitally. If you're getting into watercolors, do this. And sometimes those people, they'll message me afterwards and say, hey, you thought you were giving me business advice, but that really helped me like get grounded. So I guess on accident, I'll talk to people like that. But mostly, man, I'm just trying to create a happy place for people to connect and, some shared content, shared experiences we can all laugh about.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I love that. Uh, I think you're wrong in a sense where you're saying you're not qualified. I think everybody's qualified to talk about it, right? Did you put that thumbs up for a purpose, or did it just has that always
Oh
been
no,
there?
I'm not sure. I think it's because I did a thumbs up in
Okay,
the video and it like made it happen.
okay. I didn't know if you had
So
to
I'm
go
not
or
really
something.
sure.
Yeah,
No, not at all, dude. Yeah.
no, no worries. But like I was saying, like I think you're wrong. I think you are qualified, right? Like I'm not saying give therapeutic advice, right? But if you draw something that's related to the brain and thinking and mental health and that, like I think everybody, don't get me wrong, I could be just biased because I'm in this niche, right? But like you're already doing what that drawing would do, right? You're starting conversations, you're trying to get people to tag people so that they can bring that brotherhood, that camaraderie back, right? But like art's very expressive, man, and just express what's on your mind. Like you, it could just be you struggling, looking in the mirror, whatever the case may be. I don't know, but I love what you're doing, and I think how you answered my question was excellent, right? I just think everybody is qualified to talk about it. Like, don't preach that you know medicine. Don't preach that I can fix you or heal you or whatever the case may be, obviously, right? Because I ain't qualified for that shit either, right? But I at least want to talk
Yeah.
about it and bring it up and like make it more common in the household, right? The more you talk about mental health, hopefully the more positives are going to come from it, the more we'll express it. And hopefully we start teaching this in school, dude.
Yeah, I mean that'd be the biggest thing is, same as we should start teaching kids about how to do their taxes instead of, I love Mesopotamia, but I don't need to know that much about it.
Right. So let's talk about your art business. When did you start it, right? Like you told me a little bit earlier, but when did you officially?
Yeah. So I slowly kind of started the rollout in 2016, 17, 18. And I think after selling a couple prints online, I realized in order to get a website going, I needed to get a legit tax ID number and, be all above board. So I think in 2017 or 18, I built my website. And in order to take credit card payments, you have to have an IRS number. And after that, it's all legit. So, since then, I've been working hard to put out all the stuff I've got for sale is made in the States. It's printed here in my hometown in the Bay Area. Like I'm doing a lot of stuff and trying to keep it close to home. And a lot of guys, will be, man, you're charging that much for a deck of playing cards. I'm like, well, dude, these cards were made in Florida, bro. They were sourced locally. I mean, they're not like I could chop the price in half if you want me to ship it in from somewhere else. But I think my products and where they're made is like an extension of kind of my values. And
Yes, sir.
it's been a blast, dude, growing from doing a couple prints being mailed from the FedEx shop into having this website that's, we're doing we're doing good traffic on there. We're getting stuff out and we're able to collect a lot of money to donate, you know.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, is your business a single person? Like, is it you and then who you distribute for through, or have them print out your products, or do you have a team with you? How does this work?
So it's a two-man team. My buddy who I grew up with, Evan Serchuk, runs my. He's an independent contractor, so I guess the business is only me, but he's like such an integral part of my operation. He does all of my artwork printing and packaging and shipping, you know, like 90% of it at least. So I'll hop in and help out if we have a Christmas rush or something. But working with him enables me to really focus on interacting with people and having the time for like really genuine, thought out, longer interactions. And I can create the artwork and I'm not stressed about, you know, getting the packaging done or like going to the print shop and picking these orders up on time so that they're only sitting in the outbox for a couple days, you know. So he really helps out with the logistics of everything and makes things super smooth for me so I can focus on quality.
That's awesome. How stressful was it? How many times in the beginning did you want to throw in the towel? Like, I can't, this isn't going to be a business. Like, how many times that imposter syndrome
Uh,
sneak up and try to bite your ass?
Often, dude. And I've said it before, like when you have people in this community reach out to you and say, "Hey, dude, what you're doing is good. Keep doing it. Like, I really like it." That saved me so many times from just being like, "Dude, fuck it. I'm over this." Like, either this huge painting I've been working on got fucking coffee all over it or something, or this product that I really wanted to do and I like spent a lot of money on it and it got printed and now it looks like shit because the printer fucked up and they're not taking any responsibility. Like, I'm out a few $100. That happened over and over again. It's going to keep happening. But thankfully now, and especially back then, you know, people keep reaching out and I understand the value and the worth of this. And that makes it easier for me to like get back on the horse and carry on.
For me personally, I don't know if it works like this for you, but people reach out at like random times and it's not like fluid, right? It doesn't happen all the time, but like when they do, it's almost like somebody sent them to reach out to me, right? Like it was at a time where I was either struggling or lost or thinking negatively, and then I get this message and I'm like, wait, is this motherfucker blowing smoke up my ass or is he being serious? But like he reached out to me without any indication of me needing to be reached out to, so obviously he means what they're saying and what they're coming from, right? On the flip side of that, have you had anybody negatively reach out to you and attack you?
No, dude, I've been pretty above board. I've tried to run my business in like a way with a lot of integrity. That's one of something, and I'll even take a back seat to my own financial gain if somebody isn't happy with the product. You know, a lot of times we'll do a draft of a piece, and if I can kind of sense the person's not really happy with this, I'll push them, be like, "Hey, dude, you don't seem super stoked on this. Like, be honest with me. Tell me what we can do to make this art piece exactly what you want." Because I don't want you to think I'm some big bad artist who's only going to do one draft for you. Like, you are engaging in a friendship with me and there's a transaction later. But like the biggest thing is for me to make sure that you're happy with what we walk away with. And I really pride myself on doing that. And are there people who might not be 100% happy with what we end up with? Like, yeah, for sure. Especially in the past when it was tougher for me to start those conversations. But dude, I think for the most part, like everybody's pretty stoked with it. Like I try to be able to talk to every conversation with everybody who messages me, whether, you know, if they're offering me $5 to do a drawing, I like let them down and say, "Hey man, my, you know, I charge a little bit more than that. Here's, you know, even I'll say, here's another couple veteran artists I know who are like getting started off and might be able to help you out." You know, I try to always leave every interaction on a positive note, on a hopeful note, and like, you know, I wish you luck. Let's talk soon.
Okay, yeah,
So
that's awesome.
I would really say I haven't burned hardly any bridges. You know, there's been a couple business that I've been doing or like companies that I've been doing business with that like may have went under and I lost touch with them, but that's just kind of like a something that vanished instead of going south, you know?
Yeah, that's good. I've had a couple of narcissists that I've cut off in my personal life, and how do they get to me? They try to talk shit on my Instagram, but they're hiding behind like fake profiles that they just made, and they're just being a keyboard warrior. So I was just trying to see if you could relate and like gain some knowledge on that. But it's awesome that you've done nothing but you're trying to do nothing but positive work, right? And like obviously we're not going to be able to please everybody and make everybody happy, but I'm glad you haven't had to deal with anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, the closest I'll get is every once in a while somebody will comment on one of my pieces or send me a message about A lot of it is more of like a question. Like I recently posted a piece that has a Rhodesian brushstroke camouflage in a part of it. And I'd kind of known this a little bit, and this was an older piece, but the guy said, "Hey man, I just wanted to let you know through a message that Rhodesian brushstroke is something that, some white supremacist groups have leaned into and are utilizing as like symbolism for their movements." I was like, "Oh shit, I knew about that. I'm not making a whole shit ton of pieces. I'm not recommending Rhodesian brushstroke to anybody as like a badass camouflage pattern we can use anymore. But like, it's already in a piece. I'm not gonna scrap it because people really like the other 99% of that artwork. Or like every once in a while, I'll post a like a pinup tattoo style, Sailor Jerry chick with a big machine gun, and then we say, "Man, I really wish you wouldn't draw women like this." I'm like, "Oh, hey, this is part of the American tattoo tradition. If you want to pay me to draw a dude like this, I'll draw you a hot dude with a machine gun and I'll post it up, man. But this is what the community wants to see, and there's definitely limits. Sometimes guys message me and they want me to create these like pretty risque and lewd and like pornographic almost images. I'm like, hey man, that's not for me. Let me recommend you to another couple artists that might be able to help you out with that chick sitting on a mortar round. But that's not something that I'm trying to do here. So there's
Yeah,
definitely those conversations that are a little trickier, but again, like trying to leave everything a little bit better than I found it.
it's awesome. Did you take that from the Marine Corps?
A little bit, yeah. And don't touch the wildlife. I still always touch the wildlife, but
Right. So what would you say if somebody's wanting to start a business, no matter what it was, and they're getting ready to transitioning, been out for years, what would you tell them?
dude, I would say don't think about the money in the beginning. Like a lot of people message me and they'll send me art which is, very passionate and something that they're really proud of, and they're saying, "Hey man, how do I make money off this?" And I look at them like, "Dude, you have a lot of potential, you have a lot of passion, but just focus on creating a quality product, whether it's a quality podcast or quality shirts or quality art or like quality gun holsters or something. If you make quality work and continue to master your craft and show people through social media and gain a following, people will eventually message you and say, "Hey man, how much for this?" Or like, "Hey man, I want to sponsor you." If you're chasing money, I think you're doing it for the wrong reason, which is, it's kind of defeatist because that's how I started. I was like, "Oh, I'll trade this for whiskey or for $80 eventually." And then I started building from there. But I think the way that I went about it was, I really focused on doing art for myself, and then I would also do art for other people. And then that transitioned into people asking me about it. So if you're a young person or a veteran or anybody thinking about starting a business, get your ducks in a row, talk to other people who are running a similar business, get advice from them. If you're an artist, message me. I'm happy to talk to you about stuff. And then just focus on making a quality product, and like the profit will come, the prints will come, the website, that you might not be able to afford because it's $30 a month. Eventually you won't be thinking about that too much because you'll have so many people there because you're making a good product and you're kind and you're passionate about it.
Okay. And how would you tell them to counter their imposter syndrome? Actually, can you describe your version of imposter syndrome in your words so everybody can understand what you're saying?
Yeah, dude. I mean, I'm just a 31-year-old dude. I did 4 years in the infantry with no combat. And sometimes people message me and think I'm this crazy OG who invaded Fallujah because, I make a lot of art for those guys who did invade Fallujah. And, I try to make it clear whenever I'm on a podcast or something like that, that, I'm just a regular dude and I'm not some artistic guru who, went to art school in France to learn how to paint. Like I'm a dude with an iPad at my house and some watercolors. And I'm just trying to do my thing and make a little bit of a mark. So that's always the tough part. And then it's really countered, like we've talked about several times already, by people just messaging you and saying, "Hey, your art makes me really happy. Like I like seeing your stuff." I messaged my friend because we both think that jalapeno cheese is better than the milkshake, and that's a rare take. And for them to bond over that because of an art piece I did is like, that's encouraging.
Do you do anything to yourself? Like, do you counter those negative thoughts and say a positive thing out loud? Do you do anything personally, or is it all external that's helping you combat your imposter syndrome?
Um, I think a lot of it is external, dude. Like I'll take those memories of interactions that I've had with that are super positive and I'll replay them in my mind. So I've sort of at this point, I could go months or years without somebody being like, "Hey, man, you made a really big difference," because I know I've done it in the past. So I've sort of taken this support I've gotten from our community and built up a bank of value for myself that I can carry forward if things are looking bleak or a little bit gnarly. I know that I've done a lot of good work, and I'm in a place financially where I can donate a significant amount of my proceeds to nonprofits. So even if I don't have other people saying, hey, you're doing a great job or you're doing great work, I can look at these other nonprofits and see the work that they're doing and know that I'm contributing to that.
That's awesome. I'm glad you have that for yourself. Um, and what would you say is the hardest part about starting a company, a business?
I did the tenacity, like being able to push through all of the hiccups you're going to get through, and balancing your books at the end of the year and seeing that you only made a few $100s after hundreds of hours of work because all of your startup costs and your expenses and the taxes and the fees add up, and just being like, dude, you know what? I'm just going to keep going. I'm not gonna give up. And yeah, just that no quit attitude, dude. And I think that's something that veterans have a pretty good hand in dealing with, is not giving up. But you can get frustrating when you're not surrounded by your squad.
Right. I have a question that just came into my mind. Have you ever thought about, or do you have, like, let me teach you how to draw, or since you're an okay artist, right? Like, I don't need to inflate your head. You're an okay artist. I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. You're awesome. But
I got a huge head anyways, man. I don't need it.
uh, but as the therapy aspect, right? Like, I know it's just one more thing to add to your plate, so I hope I'm not doing that. But like, have you ever thought about starting like a small group of veterans, and like, even if it's just on Zoom and we all get like the same supplies, and like, or just pencil and paper and just start drawing something simple, like it's almost just like a group that veterans can get into, get that the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the camaraderie back. Have you ever thought about doing something like that?
Yeah, dude, I've definitely thought about it. I don't have the bandwidth right now. I'm working as a firefighter. I'm currently in paramedic school and I'm
Oh
trying to
shit.
run this business. So your boy's got a lot going on the stove, and I would love to do that. I've talked to a few people who are therapists or, run programs, and being able to donate um like coloring book type stuff so people can like just do super therapeutic coloring or donate art for fundraisers, and talking about that with them is kind of as far as I've gotten. There's a couple group chats that I'm in on Instagram that are other veteran artists, and it's not reaching out to the community so much, but we will go in there and post our most recent work or vent to each other or ask questions about artistic techniques or marketing and stuff like that. So I think within the artist community of veterans on Instagram, there's a lot of fun, and there's half of it's shit posting and dumb jokes, but the other half is like, hey, I don't feel so great about this, and hey, shut up, man, this is a great piece, dude. You need to have a little bit of value in this. You put in a lot of work and it shows. So I,
Okay.
I eventually would, like, I'm 31. I'm going to be hopefully doing this for a long time. I think one of my long-term goals is to start giving back in a way that's teaching art classes or facilitating people to explore art as a therapeutic means.
Okay, that's awesome. So I have to start wrapping this up real quick, but do you have any saved rounds, anything I missed, brother, that you'd like to speak on?
No, man, I just think that everybody should just keep doing exactly what we talked about. Just keep being positive. Don't stigmatize mental health. Um, on a selfish note, if anybody's interested in any unit art or custom work, I recently did a pretty cool piece actually with these four guys who are all firefighters now, but they've never worked at the same department, but they grew up together, they're best friends. And I took four different photographs of them at different fires and kind of stitched it together into one painting for them,
That's
and
awesome.
it's hanging on all their walls right now. And dude, if people are interested in any sort of weird art project, let me know. We'll figure something out. I recently did a playing card deck that does it's called Transition from Military Service. It's actually, I got one right here. I'll send you one. It's called the Forever Serving deck, and it kind of shows these playing cards, and the figures are military members on the bottom half, and then a civilian career on the top half. So one that's kind of selfishly made is this infantry marine who is a infantry marine on the bottom half of the king, and then a firefighter on the top half. One half he's got a rifle, the other hand he's got an axe, and there's all sorts of services in there. Every service is represented. There's a lot of really popular careers among veterans that are represented there, and trying to get this card out. And I'm working with several different companies to try to get these cards in a pack for like, hey, you recently got out. Here's like a welcome gift to the world. And, maybe they look at it and say, man, I never thought about being a teacher. They look at that teacher card and maybe it gives them a little bit of inspiration.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would love to get my hands on one of those decks of cards. That'd be cool.
Yeah, dude.
I apologize. I should have asked you this sooner. So can people find you? What's your website? All of that.
Yeah, I kept it pretty basic, a little bit egotistical. My website is bencantwellart.com. My Instagram is bencantwellart. The best way to contact me is just to hop in my DMs on Instagram, shoot me a message, comment on my stuff. Me and my buddy answer that pretty regularly. If you want, you can send me an email. It'll take me a couple days to find it and figure out what email I'm on. And pretty much all my art is available on my website. I've got hundreds of pieces that I've made over the last 4 or 5 years. And if you do our search bar function and type in, EOD or combat engineer or, submarine or whatever your MOS is or the gift you're looking for, you'll be able to pull something up. And if you don't see what you want, then shoot me a message and we can make something together.
All right, that's awesome. I'll be sure to tag you and have all that in the description for you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be on the podcast, brother. I really appreciate talking to you, and I would love to talk to you moving forward, whether it's a friendship, mentorship, or just like working together, whatever the case may be.
Oh yeah. Josh Mack, I had a blast, dude. Put me on the roster as a recurring guest. I'd be happy to talk to you again about the projects that you're working on and stuff that I'm working on and things that have been happening recently. So thanks, man. I appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, pleasure's all mine, brother.